All right, here we go with Chapter 17, Programmatic Marketing and Advertising. Programmatic advertising describes the automated serving of digital ads in real time based on individual ad impression opportunities. For our purposes, a programmatic algorithm embodies a systematic trading strategy that can be expressed by a set of rules or a computation procedure to derive results from data. Real fancy way of saying that the algorithm is involved in assessing different data points and trying to match advertiser needs, budgetary needs with the information that's available in order to achieve maximum effectiveness in reaching target audiences. Why programmatic? Programmatic owes its origins to the ARPANET, which you might remember from your Intro to Broadcasting class, was developed by the U.S. military to improve and accelerate innovation more cost effectively. Now, when the military did it, they did it as a defense mechanism, but because of their efforts, it has turned into a lot of what we realize in terms of computer and internet technology today. Financial and commodity electric trading is where activities are moved from being labor-intensive to electronic auction-based real-time marketplaces largely driven by algorithms instead of human-to-human contact. The best analogy that we can come up with for this would be the way that things are bought and sold on the stock exchanges. There's a real similar correlation between that and what we do with programmatic buying and selling. Enterprise resource planning. There's an entire ecosystem of technology and service providers supporting integrated automation systems intended to support greater control and efficiency in enterprises. There's lots of different businesses out there that try to offer their own way of helping you to navigate through all of the data and the purchasing and the different options that are available. And that's what part of trying to describe programmatic, why it becomes complicated in that because there's a lot of different systems and they each have their own proprietary ways of doing it, it's hard to kind of nail down exactly how things work in a rather specific sort of way. So a lot of what we're talking about in this chapter are going to be generalities. Now the problem. Before the advent of computing and the internet, advertisers had to carpet bomb their consumers with countless ads in print form on the radio and television and in other media. This type of exposure was necessary because there was no way to precisely target a specific audience. So while in traditional media we do have systems of audience measurement, ratings and shares and the like, these are all based on estimations. In the worlds of radio and television, you have services like Nielsen that try to estimate the audiences that are out there consuming different types of content, and those estimations are based on a representative sample of people that are out there. Whereas, as we will see with the internet and new media, everyone really is part of the sample size. So as a result, if an advertiser were to buy ads in traditional media, a certain percentage of those ads might be on target, but it was highly likely that an advertiser would be paying for impressions that yielded no benefit. Either they were having their ads reach the wrong audience member, the wrong demographic, or maybe it was trying to hit the right demographic, but that right demographic, got up during the commercial break to get something from the kitchen or whatever. So in essence, those were missed opportunities, and the advertiser would be wasting money, in effect, trying to reach people that either they did not intend to hit or that simply weren't paying attention. Let's take a look at the history of programmatic, starting from the early days. Some of the questions that brands, organizations, even media outlets were trying to answer. Is anyone viewing these ads? If they are, to what effect are they viewing the ads? Is the ad pricing correct? Is it too high or too low? What is the actual value of this stuff? What is the real cost to buy or sell ad inventory? What's the cost of servicing what is sold? What happens to inventory that can't be sold? What happens to the remnants? What is a fair value for the different types of inventory? And what is the return on investment on advertising? Are we earning as much as we possibly can as a result of the amount that we are investing? And is that good and proper for us to do? For years, there was an inefficient market for advertising inventory. It was not entirely clear to publishers what to charge for different inventory because they did not know what it was worth and to whom it was worth. It's that intangible aspect that you can't necessarily sit there and picture it and visualize it and know exactly what it is in terms of the effectiveness of the reach and the impact of the advertising. And because of the weak linkage between exposure and consumer action in traditional advertising, benefits were virtually impossible to measure in that regard. So we move forward as we get closer to the advent of the 21st century with the advent of the first digital display ad banner. This happens in 1994. Technological improvements reach the point where it becomes possible to match consumers to their actual buying behavior because we can see how many people actually interacted with and were impacted by the ad. Tools were implemented that allowed speedier answers to be developed and collected actual behaviors. Where on a screen did consumers click? Where did they go after they click? And what did they do after they clicked? Did they make a purchase? All of this stuff is trackable. Before the internet, very small sample sizes were used to estimate total audiences to radio and television programming. We kind of mentioned that just a little bit ago. The internet provides more precise measuring tools and statistics that result in larger sets of data that can be examined and analyzed. So, again, where every click, every impression is able to be measured, there's a much greater probability that the information that we're receiving in terms of audience measurement is going to be more accurate. Ads in the form of graphic images were called banners. In addition to adhering to a standard size, many websites limited the size of a file to a certain number of bytes so that the file would load and display quickly. So, yes, this impacts image quality and things like that, but if you're able to compact the number of bytes or kilobytes or megabytes that a web banner contains, obviously it's going to show up that much quicker on the screen and make it much more immediate to the consumer. And they were able to figure this out even in the days of dial-up internet so that you weren't waiting a long time for an ad to display, and therefore it actually having the opportunity to make an impact on its audience. The main problem faced by advertisers in this period was the slow speed of transmission over dial-up modems. So keeping that file size small was important in order for the ad to actually be able to manifest. And in these early days, you're not going to have a lot of interactive ads or elaborate setups because that stuff's going to take time to show up on a consumer screen. As technology advanced, the speed and quality of surfing the web improved, allowing for larger pages and more complex graphics to be displayed. So they do get more and more elaborate over time. To take advantage of the new large audiences on the internet, pay-per-click ads appeared, PPC. In other words, advertisers only paid for the impression if a consumer actually interacted with the ad. In this era, email becomes popular as well, and the first commercial email addresses were created. Think about it. If someone is at company.com, that in and of itself is a bit of an advertisement because the company name is right there, and you're forced to input at company.com, which means brand recognition, if you type someone an email that works at that company. Businesses began to allow consumers to use credit cards for online purchases, and that has really changed not just the advertising world, but the commerce world. Hello, Amazon and Chewy.com and just about any subscription service that we have online. In 1996, pure digital publishers began to flourish and ad networks start to aggregate long-tail publishers' inventory. What do we mean by long-tail? Long-tail would basically be the small publishers and blogs that were supported and depended on ad networks and ad exchanges to monetize their sites. Really what we're talking about with long-tail is that they're going to be these sort of niche markets that they deal with, where we're getting more of these customized sorts of content that is made available to consumers. And if you can reach specific types of people with specific types of content, and therefore provide advertising that's appropriate to them, a company has a much better opportunity at not just hitting their target audience, but perhaps finding loyal customers within that target audience. By the way, an ad network, an intermediary that sells publisher inventory to advertisers on a pre-sale basis. Technology improved and made it possible for all parties to effectively use remnant ad inventory, which is also known as backfill. Basically, when we're talking about remnant inventory, this is the stuff that a publisher has failed to sell using its own sales force, and then will redirect it to third parties to sell on their behalf, usually at some sort of a discount. In many cases, a publisher requires that its identity not be disclosed, so advertisers have to buy the ad inventory blind or without knowing who the publisher is. Now, the buying advertisers will know that they're going to have some sort of guarantees in terms of reaching target audiences and things like that. They just may not necessarily know the actual venue to which their advertising is going to be placed. It was not until the advent of search engines that dynamic bidding and pricing for ad inventory was introduced. Dynamic bidding, meaning that a buyer and a seller could let the marketplace decide the price of the ad inventory, and they do it impression by impression. So the actual cost fluctuates consistently and constantly. Ad personalization becomes possible and important because logins and permissions enable dialogues with consumers to be conducted across multiple devices. So, when you look up something online on one device and then you log in somewhere else, that information is going to follow you wherever you went and make things even more convenient, or depending on who you want to look at it from your perspective as the consumer or from the advertiser's perspective. Either way, that information kind of goes along with you wherever you go. It's a good place for us to take a break. We'll finish up the chapter over in the next video.